This week in Pure Reinvention.
I tell everybody I want to hit 300 ball. I want to miss twice and hit once. And if I hit once, then that's pretty good. But if you're doing that, you got to take a lot of swings.
Episode 93, Chuck Hadden, President and CEO, Michigan Manufacturers Association.
Engage, disrupt, adapt, repeat. You're listening to Pure Reinvention, the podcast for curious people.
Welcome to this episode of Pure Reinvention, where we create space for the unexpected by inspiring a reinvention lifestyle. We're here with our co-host, Jody Parker. Jody, thanks again for being a part of this Pure Reinvention journey.
Pleasure, as always.
Jody, Chuck Hadden was a marvelous person to talk to, and there's, again, so many takeaways with Chuck's message, but I want to spend just a small amount of time and cue the listeners up to be listening for Chuck's message about getting out of the office and why that's so important.
You can't expect to sit still and have opportunity come knocking at your door. It requires work.
I think one of the dangers of being too successful is it causes us to kind of coast and stay in our office and administer the success that we've had. Mm-hmm. And Chuck's reminder was, if you are not out into the marketplace talking to people, you're never going to discover the next opportunity. And that's one of a leader's most important responsibilities, is understanding where that next opportunity is. And it's probably not in your office.
That's where the new ideas are found, outside of the office. You have to be excited to explore, to see what's new.
Let's listen.
This week's episode is sponsored by HRM Services, providing solutions that work. HRMS provides customized human resource consulting services to fit the unique needs of their clients. Every client has a story, and they make it their business to learn yours. Contact HRM Services today at 517-974-8033 or visit their website at hrmservices.biz.
Very excited today to welcome Chuck Hadden. Chuck is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Michigan Manufacturers Association. Chuck, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
Pure Reinvention is thrilled to have a leader of your caliber to be a part of this podcast. And Chuck, one of the questions everybody wants to know is, of the 5 steps in the Pure Reinvention process, which step do you most closely associate yourself with?
Oh, I guess the final step, the run step. I think I like being around people that want to enforce change and want to help make change, because I think they're the innovators. They're the ones that are really making things happen, and I want to be one of them.
I want to come back and talk to you about that move step, because I think move for so many people is a very difficult one, and I think for you it's a very natural one.
It is.
So we're going to come back to that. Chuck, what is your superpower?
I think a little different than other people. I think creatively. I like to solve problems, and so I try to think outside the box. A good example is what we're looking into right now is we have a National Manufacturing Day every first Friday in October. And I started thinking about, well, how can we attract kids to it? So we're looking into how do we get Pokemon Go to go to at all our factories so that they can all come and get a Pokemon character and get a tour at the same time.
Chuck, give us an idea of a time in most recent memory where you found yourself in an uncomfortable situation.
Well, this is a tough one to pick from. There's a number of different times. I'm not real comfortable being around industry leaders who I know are industry leaders, the Van Andels and DeVosses of the world, the Bill Fords of the world. I'm intimidated by those people. I know I shouldn't be, and I work very hard not to be and introduce myself and who I am, but I'm always in awe of those kind of people. And it's uncomfortable for me to be that way, because I'm not that way, but I am really in awe of what they've done and what they've built.
Certainly pushes us into a new level, doesn't it?
No, it does. It does. When you see what they've done and where they've been and how they've changed their business model over many, many times and continue to change it. I mean, think of the automotive business, what it's going through right now. It's not even the automotive business anymore. It's the mobility business.
Can you explain why move is so important to embrace as a leader?
Well, because it's all talk up to that point, and you don't know if it's going to work or not going to work until you make that move. And when you make that move, I tell everybody I want to hit 300 ball. I want to miss twice and hit once. And if I hit once, then that's pretty good. But if you're doing that, you got to take a lot of swings. So I want to move, and I want to move in an area that I think is going to be good. And I do some research and I try to figure it out, and hopefully we're moving in the right direction. And if we're not, then fail quickly and let's try something new.
Why is it that so many leaders, in your opinion, Chuck, look at the 300 batting average in the reverse and see 2 failures instead of 1 hit for every 3 attempts? And how does that hurt them as a leader?
Well, I think it hurts them as a leader because they don't have a chance to really examine a lot of other possibilities that are out there. They can't hit a home run sitting on the plate and not taking any strikes. I think it's inherent in the old business model of associations to be very cautious, be very careful, don't cheese off the members. Well, you don't have to cheese off the members to make changes. You just have to be a little innovative and figure out where you're going. So I really embrace the model that I want to make sure I'm trying everything that I can to make this thing happen. And if I hit 300, I should be okay.
Now, I know, having known you, that you are creative and you are a risk taker. But I also know you're good at de-risking a situation.
You don't just jump off the cliff and, maybe there isn't water down there.
Right.
You got to do your research. Yeah, well, you got to do your research. You've got to look into what you're trying to do and how it would work, and how do you, and more importantly, how do you roll it out? How do you make it happen? Because so many plans get left, how many people have long-range plans on their cupboards that they haven't looked at since 63? The whole thing is you got to take action. And if you don't take action, then it's not a living document. It's not working for you. So I think you just got to have that mentality of, if it doesn't work, let's fix it.
So the greatest fear, Chuck, that people have in the movement step is it does involve action. It does involve risk. And it may involve things that are bigger than us, which means we slow things down or we skinny things down so that we can do them directly. You mentioned the number of people you need in the implementation stage to make this happen.
Yeah, well, we need everybody involved. I mean, everybody that's touched by this needs to be involved in it. We just changed our whole dues structure. Do you know how crazy that is? We went from one variation of dues to another variation of dues. When one was based on capital and surplus, and the other one was based on number of employees. We had no idea how that was going to turn out. We had to make our best guess. We wanted to be able to break even on it. But some people are paying more, some people are paying less. It's just the nature of the beast. And I had some people upset with me. But in the overall, I called every member that was $500 over or under and asked them if they're under, would they freeze their dues for a while? Or if they're over, would they freeze their dues for a while? If they're under, could I help them come up to that level over time? And I got 90% of them to do that. If you talk to people, they're good about it. And they know we're worth it.
Talk about the importance, Chuck, of the leader communicating to the degree that you are communicating externally.
I think associations are, by nature, don't have an identity. They're grouping, they're group funding, or they're groups of people. But you have to have an identity, and the identity's got to be a leadership role that somebody's got to take on. If it's not the CEO, it's got to be somebody else. It's going to be that face, and that may be the PR person or communication person. I don't know, but you got to have a face to put with it. Otherwise, people don't identify with it at all. So I spend a lot of time. I'm spending 2 days a week on the road, visiting with members and non-members, talking to them about what we do and the value that we have. I spend time on the phone calling people and talking to them, probably an hour, 2 hours a week, just checking with them. I call every new member at the halfway point and make sure they're happy with where things are going and how can we help you more. I think it's just the feel that you got to have with people nowadays. So many people, especially with email, it's so depersonalized that it's real easy for them to say, I don't know, I haven't even joined this thing. I never even talked to anybody about it. I can't get to the meetings. I can't do this. Well, yeah, you're going to lose them in a hurry. It's a very competitive business, and you've got to be out there marketing it.
You have assumed almost half of your time dedicated to being the number one storyteller for your company. Tell us why that's such a great investment of your time.
Well, I'm hoping to be able to use all these stories at some point and put them on the web and have them telling the stories. I'm just hearing fun stories about how people started their businesses, how they got to a point in their business and they were just about to lose it and somebody stepped in and helped them. I mean, there are just so many great stories, and Michigan is such a great manufacturing state. And to hear how somebody's grandfather started the business after he left this other company to go to this company. It's just an amazing time to think about things and the eras they've been through. I really, it's probably the most fun I have is listening to some of these stories that they tell and what went on in the old time.
And because you're outside of the business, connecting with the customer base, how much influence does that have on you as you come back and you create strategies to move the business forward and add value for them?
Well, I want storytelling to be part of our model. I want it to be part of our history, because if we don't start getting some of these stories down, they're going to be lost. And some companies, large companies, have historians that will keep that, but a lot of the smaller companies don't. And so I feel like that's a nature of something we could do for the industry very easily. And to hear them, my father picked the business up out of Dearborn or out of downtown Detroit, and he moved it to Ithaca, Michigan, because everybody was going unionized, and he didn't want to go that way. So we went up to Ithaca, Michigan. We were the big animal in town. We could hire the best kids, and we took off, and now we're making aircraft parts and continue to make aircraft parts.
Yeah, and it's what's interesting is everybody has a story, and people are compelled to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's fun to tell the stories because everybody's a little bit different. I talked to the guy that runs Stormy Cromer, and he didn't even know what he bought when he bought it, but he knew he was a sewer. And they were having trouble, and they were falling under, and they were just making hats at the time. So he thought, well, maybe we can take it a little further. Maybe we make some other things and do some things with it. He didn't realize what an iconic brand he was buying at the time, and the following that it had. And it didn't hit him till about 3 years into the thing when people started coming up and asking him to sign their hats. Because the best story he has is he had this big mountain and a guy come into the restaurant where he was, and he says, "You're with Stormy Cromer, aren't you?" He says, "Yes, I am." He says, "Well, I'm so-and-so," and he can't even remember the guy's name now. "I'm so-and-so. I played defensive tackle or defensive end for the Wisconsin Badgers, and then I got drafted, and I have spent 17 years playing defensive end for the Dallas Cowboys." And wow. I knew a lot of people. I knew a lot of famous people. I got used to being around a lot of famous people, but I really appreciate you signing this hat because I only have 2 autographs, and you're one of them. He goes, "Really? Who's the other one?" "Bob Hope." "Holy smoke, this guy's up here with Bob Hope." He's saying, "Oh my God, this is a serious following."
Right.
So, that's what it hit him, so now he carries a Sharpie all the time because people ask him to sign it.
I don't think people realize the impact they can have on others when they connect, right?
Yeah.
And there's a movement.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And because you are outbound and hearing these things and being inspired, I'm sure, by these experiences.
You never know what it's going to take, yeah.
How does that impact your ability as a leader to think more big picture as you bring leadership to the Michigan Manufacturers Association?
Well, I think it helps to know that other people are out there with a business, a for-profit business, struggling at times also, going through, I had the privilege of starting on September 15th of 2009, which was the same day Freddie and Fannie went bankrupt. And after seeing The Big Short, I started getting, oh my God, this is really worse than I thought. I knew it was bad, and now I have a chance to go out and hear these stories. And they love it when I come to their factory. They love to show me their place. I love to see it. I love to see them making all these stuff. I mean, you go down to some of these places, it's high tech stuff that they're making. Gentex is in Zeeland, Michigan. They probably employ more people than live in Zeeland, Michigan, quite frankly. But they make every rear view mirror in every car because they are so innovative that every car maker wants to have them in their car. And when you have a situation like that, a demand like that, the price and the margins go up a little bit. So it's a great company, but they aren't satisfied with that. They continue to innovate and look at ways that they can work this magic in other ways. Yeah, the rearview mirror now tints by itself. Yeah, the rearview mirror now tells you the direction it's going. But soon, how can they take that technology and use it somewhere else? Well, they're using it in windows for airplanes because the shade on the airplane is the first thing that breaks. And you got to take the whole inside panel out, around the window, put up a new shade, take out the old shade, put up a new shade, put the panel back on. I mean, it's a costly thing. Sure. And so if you could just change that so that it got dark when it was sunny and got light when it wasn't sunny, you take all that away, and you're saving the aircraft companies money that they don't mind paying the extra for in the window right away because they're making it up over time.
And so all of a sudden, this company who started out just basically making rearview mirrors
that you flip with your thumb probably,
is now solved a major problem for a high-tech company.
Absolutely. And we'll continue to find other ways they can be creative.
So, Chuck, how does a leader encourage those kinds of big picture thoughts so that a business has the ability to connect to those new opportunities? What does the leader have to do?
Well, I think the leader has to think creatively also. I think he has to push people to be creative, to give them permission to miss 2 times before they get a hit. And it's okay to miss. I think in a lot of these cases, it's one person that had an idea and they started building on it. It was, Mr. Kellogg that had the idea first for cornflakes.
Right.
And then he started building on it from there. So but now look at it. Now they have
It's constantly changing.
Constantly changing. And it's no longer just a cereal company. It's now a snack company. And it's Pop-Tarts.
Right.
And it's potato chips that come in this round cans.
Oh, Pringles.
Pringles. They're now own Pringles. So, they continue to innovate and continue to try. And they're going through some real tough times right now. They are struggling as they try as cereal exposure. They've been in the worldwide market a long time. And cereal by the millennials is going down in style. It's just not being eaten as much. So where do they find their growth to keep their company going? And they're looking for that. They're looking for it in snack food. They're looking for it in cookies. They're looking for it in other ways. And they need to be able to keep that engine driving while keeping their base business, cereals and whatnot, healthy and looking for new ways they can expand those too.
Chuck, how do you fuel your own mind with diversification ideas so you yourself stay fresh and can bring that kind of diversification thought to the business that you run?
Well, I think it's partly by going out and visiting with these people and hearing their stories. And I think that keeps me excited and fresh. It's just fun to hear what they did and how they got started. We had iconic companies in this state that we kind of just take for granted. And we should be thankful for that they're here and that they have great stories to tell. I mean, it's just unbelievable stories.
What I'm hearing you say is it's almost impossible to have these big thoughts and sit in your office. That these big
you
thoughts
got to get
happen
out.
Because
I would agree 100%. You sit in your office, you're going to read emails. Well, you can read emails on the drive, and somebody else can drive, but you're not going to hear these stories from people if you don't go out and talk to them and be in person with them and get a feel for them. And so that they do share the stories. And quite frankly, they're excited to share their stories. Nobody asks them though.
Right. And by asking, they in turn inspire you.
Oh yeah, absolutely do. Yeah, they're fun. I walk out of those places a mile high, walking on clouds.
And ready to bring something back in a positive way to your own business.
Exactly.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks.
Jody, Chuck Hadden is such a marvelous executive, and I really like Chuck's comment about the importance that an executive brings to an organization to continually keep them trying. Can you speak to the message that Chuck was trying to communicate about the importance of trying?
My interpretation of Chuck's message was that when you're in a certain industry or a certain job for a certain amount of time, it's easy to get complacent. And if you're not trying to find new ideas or trying to find new ways to use your product, how do you plan to move forward?
One of Chuck's messages was talking about how to teach us to look for what's next.
Exactly.
That kind of brings me to the next point I heard him talk about, which is when you're looking for what's next, there's a certain percentage that are failures and there's a certain percentage that are opportunities. What was Chuck's recommendation on how we should view failure versus opportunity?
Chuck made a great point in that when you're looking at your strikes as failures, you kind of back away from taking that risk. But we all know that you need to take risks to be successful. So when you're looking at your misses as a failure rather than, okay, well, I've tried this, it didn't work, now let's move on quickly to the next. When you're not doing these things, you can't see what's next. You constantly have to be moving, whether it's a positive outcome or a negative outcome, to get there.
I think sometimes we feel like if we don't know the 100% right answer, we don't do anything. And I think Chuck's message was, try, and something will happen.
Yes.
And let that teach you then what to do next.
It's certainly easier to not try, to not put yourself out there, to not navigate uncharted waters. But I think when you do put yourself out there, when you do try, the accomplishments that come with those are so much greater, are so much more exciting, are so much more rewarding.
I think that's such a really good point, and that brings me to another thing that really struck me very strongly about Chuck's message, and that is it's easy to talk. It's much harder to walk. And your point leading into what you just talked about, Jody, was now we can start to measure results. Mm-hmm. And the difference between talking about doing something and actually doing something. So what's the take-home message there?
Well, anybody can think a thought. Anybody can have a great idea. But the true test comes in moving that idea. The true test comes in putting that idea into action and seeing what happens.
The fifth step in reinvention, which is movement, Chuck is saying get out of the office, turn activity into opportunity, and walk the talk.
Yep, you won't get anywhere without doing that last step.
If you're ready for a change, make it a change that lasts. Make it pure reinvention.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pure Reinvention. Keep the conversation going and get alerts when new podcasts are up by following us on Twitter at Pure Reinvention or sign up for our mailing list at purereinvention.com.